Well, we will start in Spain, and our friend Juan, who is not in Spain this week, is in fact in Mexico. I'm not remotely jealous at all, but he's in Mexico this week. We will talk through what is an awkward week in La Liga in many ways, folks, because we have lots of midweek games. They're staggered through midweek. Transparency, we're recording this on Wednesday morning, so there are a few of the bigger boys who are still yet to play. The likes of Atletico Madrid, for example, play on Wednesday. Real Madrid travel to Las Palmas on Thursday night as well. We're going to be focusing towards the weekend action and the games that have happened so far, but just so you know, plenty of games midweek. We'll be focusing on the weekend runs. We'll start with Barcelona, who have actually played again this week. They got a 2-1 win over Rayo Vallecano. Dani Olmo getting his first goal for the club. And despite all the problems and the registration issues at Barcelona at the moment, it's been, at least on the field, a pretty solid start for Hansi Flick.
Yes, I mean, I think people in Madrid is surprised with Barcelona. I don't know in Barcelona, but in Madrid, people is surprised because they have won everything. And it's like a very solid, very consistent team with Hansi Flick and with extremely good Lewandowski. So what about if Barcelona is competing this league with Real Madrid? So, I mean, at least in Madrid, people is surprised about the performance of Barcelona so far.
Yeah, I suppose it's that thing, isn't it, of thinking, well, there's not that many sides who are going to be able to stop us this season, and then seeing Barcelona actually starting very, very well. You go from feeling very confident to sort of saying, oh, well, hang on a second, they might actually be good enough this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even considering that they have a lot of financial problems. I mean, the thing with Dani Olmo was one of them, but still they have problems, and even that they are performing really well in the field. You know, I think if Laporta believes, if Laporta gets to make this team to work, it's like another miracle of Laporta, because he had so many problems in the financial way, in the financial sense, that it's incredible that they performing so well in the pitch.
I mean, Robert Lewandowski has worked with Hansi Flick previously over at Bayern Munich. Actually, one of Lewandowski's best periods in a career that's been full of great periods was with Hansi Flick. Goal every 74 or so minutes when working with him. Is he using Lewandowski any differently in that starting 11, or is it just kind of a confidence thing, or at least a support thing for Lewandowski?
No, I think it's a question of confidence. I think a lot of people, considering the age of Robert Lewandowski, thought that he's already done, he's already finished. But I consider that, and Hansi Flick considered as well, that the big players like Robert Lewandowski was and is still to maintain has to be maintained in the lineup, because they can perform really well. And so far, Hansi Flick has the reason. 4 goals in the first 3 games. What else, no?
It's strange with Lewandowski. We don't need to go too much into this, but obviously I know that the two great players of our generation, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, but he is, in terms of his record, in terms of what he has done at times, he's not a million miles away from those two guys in terms of what's been won, where he's played, who he's played for, who he's played alongside. He's obviously very highly rated, but I think sometimes he goes under the radar a little bit, Lewandowski, with just how good a career he's had.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's one of the best strikers in the last 15 years. His records in goals are incredible in all the teams. I'm really confident when he signed for Barcelona, because he has a extraordinary career. And as you say, I mean, to talk about Messi and Cristiano, it's like another level. Let's say it's another level. But I agree that it's not so far from these two guys, at least in terms of goals, of quantity of goals he scored every season.
Yeah, extraordinary player, Robert Lewandowski. Barcelona take on Valladolid this weekend, 1.25 Barcelona. The Valladolid are going to get picked off here by a couple of goals, you'd imagine, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think so. Valladolid has so difficult start. Real Madrid, Barcelona now. I mean, they maintain the scores 0-0 in the first half in Bernabeu Stadium. But, I mean, it will be a surprise if they maintain a draw against Barcelona. The normal thing is, 2 goals difference between these two teams.
And you have to feel sorry for Valladolid as well. Their start to the season, they had a great win over Espanyol, but then they face, of course, Real Madrid, and they've got a tough old run of games. Leganés midweek might be slightly easier for them, but not an easy team necessarily. Leganés. Let's talk Real Madrid. Obviously, again, they've got Las Palmas midweek as well, but I think Real Madrid look very, very good. And what I think has impressed me the most, and I think we flirted with this idea last week as well, Juan. They've brought this superstar in, this big, huge name superstar, but it doesn't appear to be all focused around him. Certainly not at the moment anyway. That whole system appears to be working quite fairly at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, all the focus was in the Mbappé debut in Bernabeu, and then everything goes to Brahim and Hendrix. Even in our cover in Marca, the main picture was Hendrix, so everything was on Mbappé. But now, Real Madrid has so many stars that then appears Brahim, then appears Hendrix, and the big question for Las Palmas game is who is gonna be in the lineup. I mean, for sure Mbappé, for sure Vinicius, but Rodrigo will be in the lineup. Who will be the replacement again of Bellingham? That's for me the big question, considering this Las Palmas game.
And then, of course, they go on to take on Betis at the weekend as well. 1.31 to win that. As you'd expect, Real Madrid are always going to be short in the betting pretty much no matter who they're playing. How do we rate Real Betis' start to the season up to this point?
I think Betis will be, first of all, in Bernabeu has always tremendous fans. They a lot of people living in Madrid from Sevilla support Betis, and they go always to Bernabeu. So that's 1 point. Second point, I think still Pellegrini don't have the team he wanted because they sold some players. Isco is not really in a good shape because he was injured. So I mean, I think it's not the Betis Pellegrini still wants, but maybe they can have a good game in this weekend in Madrid. Why not?
Maybe a narrow Real Madrid win rather than a big comfy one. Maybe the way to go there. One team who've really impressed me so far, and they've actually played all three of their games to this point, is Villarreal. Now, I went into this season, Juan, thinking that Villarreal, they'd lost some key players. They'd perhaps not replaced those in the way that they would have liked to have done, but they start with a draw against Atletico. They win at the Pizjuan. They now win a cracking game against Celta Vigo on Monday night. They've done very, very well so far, Villarreal.
Yeah, it's a very attractive team. Always, signing good players. They have this problem with Danjuma. Danjuma Marcelino has like a bit fight in the beginning of the season, but now it's solved. And I think the Ayose sign is really good. And also this guy Baena, which is not very internationally. He's not like very well known, Baena, but was one of the two players that won Euro and Olympic Games, and this Baena is really the leader of the team. And for me, it's very attractive thing. I agree with you that they can be like a good surprise in this La Liga.
Yeah, I mean, you think back to only a few years ago, and they were challenging in the Europa League, and they had a lot of players who I really liked. Cedric Bakambu was there; he was a player I really liked at the time, and there was a lot of quality. They've had a few weaker years, but a really good start. 7 points from their opening 3 games is not a bad way to go. At the weekend, they take on Valencia. Now, Villarreal are 2.46 to win that game, but Valencia 2.82. I love the idea of Villarreal winning this game because we thought Valencia might struggle this season and they've not looked right to this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think Villarreal, I agree, Villarreal is really favorite in this game. It's a kind of derby because you know that Villarreal is also in the Comunidad Valenciana. So it's a kind of derby, like Valencia is the big city of this community and Villarreal is a small city of the one, so it's like a kind of derby, unless considering that Villarreal belongs to Castellón. But I agree, it's quite favorite. I think Valencia still has to make one sign, but difficult. We talk about this always. Really difficult financial problems that I think Baraja will have a difficult year this season.
And Mamadashvili as well does sound like he might be on the way out on top of that. So there's just an awful lot of problems for Valencia. They've obviously got Athletic Club before they get to that Villarreal game. But that derby, I think Villarreal look like a great way to go. Atletico Madrid, they obviously, again, haven't played that third game as of yet. That's against Espanyol. But they do travel to Athletic Club at the weekend. How would we rate Atletico Madrid's start to the season overall so far, Juan?
I would say 8 points, up to 10. I mean, I think that if you talk to Atletico fans, they are really happy. They are enthusiastic with this team. They're gonna win the Liga, La Liga. They are like very passionate. But I think they are rating really well. And still, we didn't see an extremely good Julian Alvarez, which is his main sign. But I think they're gonna they sign. Also, Lenglet, they signed Juan Musso as a second goalkeeper. They're signing a lot of interesting players. Even they're gonna sign maybe Hummels, the German one. So I think they are rating really well, and I think it's gonna be a huge match. This one against Athletic.
Yeah, obviously Espanyol first, but then at the weekend 2.52 Atletico Madrid. If you want to back that, I've really enjoyed this start to the season, more so than I think I have done the last couple of years. Juan, there's been loads of goals. There's been some surprising results. You've got a few of the big boys who perhaps we thought wouldn't do well, who haven't done well, and then some of them have as well. Can we just have a quick word on Sevilla? Because I don't think you and I have spoken a great deal about Sevilla over the chats we've had so far. 2 draws so far this season. Obviously, a side who historically you like to back, you think will win at home, and away from home, you never really want to get involved in Sevilla in any way, shape, or form. Where do you think they're at the moment, Sevilla? They've got Girona at the weekend.
I think they are a bit worried. I talked to some Sevilla fans, and they are really worried because they don't want to suffer like the last 2 years. I mean, they want to be the old Sevilla, but that's quite impossible. I mean, to win the Europa League, that's another Sevilla. So this is over. I think Sevilla has to, to reinvent themselves and try to not to suffer. And that's the reality right now of Sevilla. They cannot aspire to go to Champions League, to go to even to Europa League. I think they have to go to be to walk step by step and to reinvent themselves because they signed a lot of new players.
Yeah. Strange few years for Sevilla, certainly after that Unai Emery domination. And, of course, I was also at that final where they destroyed Middlesbrough. It was a lovely day out, spoiled by Sevilla absolutely destroying Borough in every way, shape or form. The most one-sided final of any game I've ever seen in my whole life. It was a genuinely...
What a final.
What a final for Sevilla fans. I mean, I had a lovely time in Eindhoven, I've got to say. It was a great day out. I flew out in the morning and flew back on the evening. I had a few drinks in between, and then I watched Borough get absolutely destroyed. Just one final word before we go on Celta Vigo. Obviously, we've mentioned they lost to Villarreal on Monday, but a 4-3 absolute barnstormer. They've won 2 of their opening 3 games. And obviously, Claudio Giraldes went in to save Celta Vigo last season, did it, and now they appear to be not just worried about relegation. This seems like a progressive side.
Yeah, they are trying to progress. There was a tremendous polemic thing with Rafa Benitez. I think Rafa Benitez is not the most loved coach in Vigo. Because of what he said these days. But anyway, I think Giraldes is doing a tremendous job, and I think here in Madrid and in La Liga debates, we are talking about that Celta can be one of the surprise team in La Liga. At least Giraldes, this coach, has a very attractive way of playing. And even, they can lose because they lost 4-3. But if they lost, they are losing for scoring a lot of goals.
Yeah.
So I think can be like a team to watch in this La Liga.
And they're away at Osasuna at the weekend. They're a huge price, by the way. 3.2 to win away at Osasuna, which seems like a massive price. Osasuna, I'm not sure what we're expecting from them this season, Juan, but that's a winnable game for Celta Vigo.
Yeah, it's a winnable game. Yes, it's true that Osasuna, when they play at home, they are really strong. But I think Celta can do it. And People is thinking in the Spanish people is really very passionate. If they maybe Celta wins, they are thinking in going to Europe straight away. I think they have to be step by step, but this Osasuna game, I think, is winnable for Celta. Yes.
Yeah, big old price. And as Juan said, Osasuna have been very good at home so far. Draws against Leganes and Mallorca. They travel to Girona midweek as well. Juan, you're in Mexico. Thank you so much for joining us from Mexico. You can be there next week as well. But I'm so jealous of the fact that you're in Mexico at the moment. If I look out the window of our studio right now, it's pouring with rain and it's windy, and you're in beautiful Mexico. So I'm very, very jealous. As always, appreciate your expertise. We will speak to you again next week. Right, we head over to Italy now with our fantastic expert, Daniele Verri. Another interesting week in Italy, Daniele. We will start with AC Milan, who had a horror show, really, away at Parma. A 2-1 loss, and not a very good performance at all.
No, not at all. It was a very similar performance to the one they had on match day 1. The fact is that they included in their starting 11 most of their new arrivals and, let's say, starters who were left out of the starting 11 against Torino. So that was even more depressing for the fans. We've heard them whistling at the end of the match in Parma. Obviously, they cannot be happy with Fonseca and with the team, the way they reacted, lack of grit, lack of spirit, no speed, no stamina, no ideas. A copy of what they did against Torino, and not a good sign for a new manager after the pre-season, the successful pre-season that they had in the US.
I mean, disjointed, lackluster, scared, which is the big word I saw when I was reading some of the Italian press ahead of this. You do not want to be an AC Milan manager whose team is described as scared, do you?
Not really. I mean, Fonseca just started. I mean, it was Parma could have won by a way larger margin. So they lost 2-1 because of the lack of composure of their strikers up front. Because every time AC Milan lost the ball, Parma went in counter-attack big time, and the AC Milan defenders or players looked like they didn't feel like running after them. So they were not running behind when necessary, and they were attacking with several players. But I mean, even when they were doing pressing, it looked like 3 players were on that side of the pitch, 3 players were on the other side of the pitch. There was no organized pressing or no organized behavior by the players on the pitch, and that's something which cannot be good news for Fonseca. I mean, in less than a month is derby time. We got Champions League coming up soon, so they need to fix a few things, starting with their attitude first, okay, because that's the key, and then obviously also a bit of tactical unity, I would say.
Yeah, well, that comes back to that idea of disjointed behaviour, didn't it, really? Obviously, Parma did really well. You said they could have won by more. AC Milan travelled to Lazio next, 2.52 AC Milan in that game. Lazio 2.82. Lazio off the back of that loss to Udinese, they lost 2-1 in that game. It feels like this is a massive game for AC Milan because Lazio don't look awful, but they don't look great so far. They should be getting beaten, and so AC Milan, there's going to be some more pressure on for that game against Lazio.
I mean, everyone is waiting for a reaction, so you cannot lose 2 or 3 games like that if you are a candidate, if you think you are a candidate for the Scudetto in the end. So they started as bad as they could. I mean, they grasped an equalizer against Torino match day 1 by a large amount of luck, I would say, also by putting all the players in at the end and scoring 2 almost random goals. So
a win's a win.
There's plenty.
A win's a win, isn't it? Eh?
No, yeah. But I mean, there's plenty There's plenty of work to do. It's obviously a massive game. Playing in Roma is never easy. Lazio are not playing fantastic football. They played well on match day 1, and then they did 2 steps backwards on match day 2 in Udine. But Udine probably will not be the same club that we've seen struggling last season, although not that incredible amount of players have changed in that sense. It's almost the same squad, but there will be some. I have the feeling that we won't see Udinese struggling the way they did last season. And Udine is not an easy place to be and to play football. But, Lazio will also be... fans will also expect a reaction from Lazio.
Yeah.
So who comes out on top? I don't know. Let's go for a draw, maybe.
A draw is possible, of course, and that's sometimes the way to go, isn't it? The draw in that game, 3.45, by the way, if you fancied that. The other side of Milan, of course, Inter Milan, a very simple win over Lecce, 2-0. I would say not a great deal to report. Damian and Çalhanoğlu with the goals. That was just a nice little home victory, really.
Yeah, they went up 2-0, and then they probably conceded the first shot on goal to Lecce, maybe in the 70th minute or something. Lecce were never there to create any chance or create any real danger to them. So Inter were missing Lautaro Martinez through injury. He's going to be missed also in the next match day. He's not going to play. But still, having Taremi is a good opportunity, is a good solution for them to replace him. And he has already proven at the weekend with Thuram to combine well. He's an experienced player and an experienced striker with plenty of Champions League appearances and everything. So Inter are fine, despite the fact they're missing probably one of their most important players, if not the most important one, their captain and everything.
They obviously host Atalanta this weekend. Atalanta 5, by the way, to win at Inter 1.65. Atalanta, you mentioned this last week, that Torino, a tricky team to go to. Torino win that game 2-1. Inter should be winning this, and Atalanta, well, they'll be desperate to improve after last time, but do we think that Inter will be too strong for them?
It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough game. It's difficult. It's a difficult one to predict. I expect goals because Atalanta scores, but also concedes opportunities. Inter is a club that can obviously score goals, a team that can obviously score goals at any minute with plenty of solutions and blah, blah, blah. Many players in the boxes, so penalties are like at the weekend. There will be penalties also for Inter this season, for sure, for the way they play. Inter are favorite, obviously. They are favorite, but Atalanta, we've seen Atalanta beating all of the big teams throughout the years recently. So they have all it takes to beat Inter. They came away with a loss against Torino, but they could have drawn easily. They had the chances, they had everything they needed. They had a penalty in injury time, and they missed it. Probably a 2-2 would have been a more fair results for all of the teams involved. But Torino, as I said, Torino is a tricky place. They've got Vanoli, new manager this season. They seem to have a very compact group, and they were struggling to score goal last season, which maybe they found a solution for that. 2 games, 4 goals so far. It's good. They're doing well.
Good start.
Finally having some, I think, realistic opportunity to qualify for Europe.
Torino this season in terms of the Europa League, the Conference League approach?
Or Conference League, UEFA Europa League. Let's see what happens. But, they don't play in Europe. They've got a good squad. They've got a better manager, I think, than they had last season. They seem to be more compact. If they carry on scoring, why not?
We will see. Torino, of course, this weekend. Who have Torino got? I should know that off the top of my head. What an idiot. Oh, they're away at Venezia, aren't they, of course, this weekend. Big relief for Antonio Conte. A huge relief for Antonio Conte after
Massive
last
one.
week. Yeah, 3-0 win over Bologna. The Kvaratskhelia show. I always struggle with the name, and I always will struggle with the name. Great team move for the first. What was the difference in these two performances then? Was it just confidence? Was it just being at home? Was it just the flow? Was it more time for Conte? How much better was this performance than their opening game?
I mean, I guess the second performance was a result of the first one, because they had to react at some point after such a massive blow. Antonio Conte said it himself. The big slaps that we received in the second half against Verona did a job. So we understood that we couldn't play like that. It's nice that Kvaratskhelia was the main protagonist of the game, and that Captain Di Lorenzo scored the first goal, the opener, two players that were rumored to leave the club during the summer, but we've seen them 100% committed the other night against Bologna. Napoli played a good match. They scored, but as it is in football, football is a chain of episodes, a football game. So they scored in injury time of the first half, so the very best moment to score a goal and go to the break 1-up. And then they scored two more in the second half. I mean, Bologna was there. Bologna was on the pitch also. So they had their chances also. They were equal to Napoli until the first goal fell. And then in the second half, Napoli was clearly superior. Took the chances they created and won 3-0. I mean, if you look at the match, until a certain point, there was not such a big difference between the two clubs on the pitch. But obviously, as I said, for me, football is a football match is a chain of episodes. And according to what happens, then the next things that happen follow mainly what happens first, so to say.
Brilliant from Napoli, and a big relief, as we said, for Antonio Conte.
Yeah,
They host
important.
Parma. Yeah, hugely important. Certainly early days, not just in a season, but as being a manager, hugely important in those early days, especially after last week. Napoli host Parma. We know we've spoken about Parma. They'll be on a high after that win over AC Milan. Napoli at home. This is going to be the basis of. I mean, it's the basis for any club, isn't it? A good home form, but 1.48. I think a fair price. I think Napoli are likely to sort of bring Parma back down to earth.
They will have Lukaku by then, for sure. So they could field Lukaku against Parma. McTominay is on his verge to join the club. Big names, a good unexpected. I mean, Antonio Conte. I mean, sometimes he also hire managers. I don't think that was the only idea behind the signing of Antonio Conte, but having managers of a certain level obviously helps you in recruiting people. We've seen it at anywhere in football, but let's talk Serie A. Let's see the players that have arrived in Como. I don't think that any of them would have come if Cesc Fabregas hadn't been there, probably. So he's somebody who can pick up the phone and call Sergio Roberto and say, hey, mate, do you want to join us? Come for a season. Place is beautiful, blah, blah, blah. You'll enjoy it. We play a certain kind of football that you like. But if I were to call, he wouldn't pick up his phone, mate. But I mean, being Cesc Fabregas, it's much easier also for Como. And I think the same is for Napoli.
Yeah, so Scott McTominay.
Gilmer also on his way to arrive. He will arrive also from Brighton. So we will see Napoli improving definitely from now on.
Yeah, well,
but Parma, scary Parma, because they can make the game that they want. So like the game they did on match day 1 or also on match day 2, just wait for the opponent to come and then have those Bonis, those Man, those Mihailas running like crazy up front. And I mean, Napoli are favorites, obviously. Napoli are favorites, but I mean, Parma have already stunned AC Milan on match day 2. They drew against Fiorentina on match day 1, but would have largely deserved the win. So fair enough. It's a team that has played in that formation for the last 12 months, at least 12 months, the formation that they're fielding now. So they're used to play together. They know what they're doing. So you see that Pecchia taught them what to do with the ball in the different moments of a game. So I wouldn't underestimate them. AC Milan probably did a little bit, and that's the result.
Yeah, maybe chance for Palmer to score in that game, and obviously Dennis Manu, you mentioned the pressing there, the Romanian, 2-2 for him so far this season as well. He's in a good vein of form at the start of this term. People who aren't in a good vein of form, particularly Roma. Now, you mentioned some good news in the likes of Di Lorenzo and Kvaratskhelia for Napoli. Roma had an extraordinarily good piece of news this week with Dybala agreeing to stay. Daniele, I wish I was in a position in my life that I could turn down 75 million euros.
Man, it won't happen. Sorry, I can tell you now. It won't happen for you, and it won't happen for me. No, I'm not. I don't want. Nah, don't be upset. I'm just previewing the future.
Oh, great! Yeah,
I wish you were one day. Yeah, so don't. I'm not jealous. So I wish you all the best.
In 10 years' time, I'm going to have 75 million euro. I'm just going to come to your house and wave it at you.
Yeah, go on then. Leave 5 million in front of the door before you go back home, mate.
Yeah, as an apology. Yeah. Roma lose to Empoli. Yeah, look, it's a little bit misleading in a way in that Roma hit the woodwork 3 times in that game. They were very, very close to breaking through, getting at least a point. They weren't. From what I've read, they weren't terrible in this game, Roma. It didn't go their way, but obviously that still increases the pressure.
Yes, it didn't go their way, but Empoli were good. You have to say that Empoli were good. They had at least 3 massive chances before they actually scored the first goal. So they could have they could have taken the lead way earlier than they did. I don't know if that would have been better or not, because you never know. If you score early, then there's more time at disposal to your opponent for scoring an equalizer. But I mean, they played some proper football, some good football, honestly. They have D'Aversa as a manager. D'Aversa is a manager that likes to play counter-attack. Okay, so stay low in the pitch and then quickly go in counter-attack. We've seen that a few times, so Roma will have to work on that while attacking, still keeping in mind that you might get a counter-attack by such a team. We've seen a couple of individual performances who stood out for Empoli. And AS Roma, they all came to cheer Dybala, and he's staying. Dybala did a couple of Dybala moves, hit a incredible post in the second half with a great personal action. But Rome had enough chances to draw the game or even to win the game. It didn't go their way. I think they won 7-0, 7-1 last season. So this season, it didn't go the same way. There is work to be done, There is work to be done. And hopefully the market is closed soon and they can concentrate just on football and not on this and that and look around.
The Dybala thing will undoubtedly be unsettled the club for a short time.
Definitely.
As we said last week as well, it's not just about selling that player, it's about replacing that player, which will have taken up a lot of focus as well. Roma travel to Juve very shortly as well, which is going to be a fascinating tie. Juve 1.75, Roma 4.9 in this game. Juve obviously ran through Verona. It wasn't a particularly difficult game at all for them. Dusan Vlahovic had a really good game as well. That to me is probably the most interesting game of this next set. I mean, Juve Roma 1.75, Juve Roma 4.9. That's going to be a cracker, isn't it?
That's gonna be a cracker for sure. This is gonna test also Juventus in a different way, because Juventus had, with all due respect, had Como and Verona so far. One is a newly promoted club, the other one is a club who's meant to struggle until the very end to maintain Serie A status, top flight status. It's gonna be a good test for Juventus. Test with against a team or a club who has ambitions. At the moment, I see Juventus highly favorites because of the way they have played. It's not only the fact that they played against, let's call them minor teams or whatever you want to call them. It's not what I mean, but second half of the table teams, whatever. But I was sort of impressed by Juventus, by the youth players that Thiago Motta fielded, and instead of more experienced players, the group spirit that they developed on the pitch, and also the attitude by Dusan Vlahovic. You were saying, no, is important. He scored a brace and everything, but he was never like arrogant or hysteric as we've seen him several times last year. Juventus are different. Juventus take the game to the opponents now. So last season they were slow, they were passing the ball around, left, right, left, right, left. Now it's way more vertical. Locatelli in a different position is not their playmaker. Plays much better, can show his physicality also, and win balls, recover balls in midfield like he did on the goal for the 1-0 the other night. I see Juventus as a team at the moment, and I mean, Consensao was there yesterday. Now we've got Cup Miners being announced, we've got Nico Gonzalez being announced, so they're still spending money, still putting quality into an already functioning system. So obviously we are at the very beginning, as you said. Yeah. Verona and Como cannot be let's say the standards that Juventus need to be judged at, but it's the most positive starts for the Bianconeri ever. Not ever, but that it could have been. So couldn't have gone any better.
Do you know what it feels like? Obviously, with Thiago Motta leaving Bologna and going into Juventus, do you know for the first time in a little while, they feel fresh. They feel a little bit more fresh. You mentioned those young players going in as well and doing really well. Maybe I'm wrong, I'm on the outside of it, but watching Italian football for a while, even when they were doing well, Juve just felt like a kind of a machine that was just going. Whereas now it feels a bit more kind of fresh and new, and like you were saying, a slightly different approach. Rather than control of the ball being the key thing, Juve are trying to get it forward. Direct's the wrong phrase, but slightly more progressive, slightly more positive. And they just feel a lot fresher to me.
I fully agree. I mean, there were two main things. I mean, or three. I don't know. Let's count them together. The new sporting director obviously was in charge also last season, but last season he wasn't on the same boat, let's say, or he wasn't understanding. He wasn't getting on well with Allegri. Yeah. Exactly, and he wasn't getting on with the manager. So there were internal issues at the club, okay? So that has changed. So the sporting director, Giuntoli, is a manager or a director that anywhere is a proven track of quality work. Let it be Carpi, let it be Napoli, won the Scudetto at Napoli. That's not easy. Now Juventus is going to do the same. The guy is good. Yeah. Then a new manager with a completely new mentality, much younger. Okay, so attacking minded. Okay, doesn't care. Okay, if you're called Danilo, but Savona plays better, Savona plays. Yeah. Although he was playing third division football last season, no problem. So Bangula, same thing. Only third division experience, no problem. He plays better than the other one he plays. He gives me more grit in training than he plays, no problem. So manager is essential. And then obviously the players, because if you want to start buying Cup Miners, who was the best midfielder of the season, he starts buying Nico Gonzalez, who was the best player on the wings, he starts buying here and there important player, then obviously Thuram or whoever they are. I mean, it starts getting difficult for the rest of the lot.
Honestly,
they're doing a good job.
Yeah, early days, but I also like the idea of taking someone from a sort of a middle Serie A side who's done great things in someone like Thiago Motta and saying, do you know what? You've done brilliant things with a smaller budget, but we like what you've tried to achieve. Here's the big boys. Come and work with us. And I always like that approach rather than just going, right, who's the biggest name here? Who's the biggest name here? Just going, you've done really well. You've done really well. Come on, let's give you a go. They've tried it in Germany an awful lot. In France, it happens a lot. I just like that. I think it's a really good approach. Any other business?
And sorry, one thing, and it fits also with the new idea of the club. Okay, younger people, less expensive if you want, because Thiago Motta cannot expect the same amount of money that I don't know, Allegri, Pep Guardiola, Antonio Conte, or whoever you want to name them all. I mean, he's a manager who is now on the verge of becoming an important manager. So he has done extremely well at Bologna in the last 2 seasons, and Bologna proved it on the pitch. So they were good to watch. They were nice to watch. It was good fun to have the opportunity to go to the stadium and watch Bologna live, tear apart some of the bigger clubs in Italy. So it's good.
Yeah, Bologna have got Empoli, by the way, this weekend. They're 1.66 in that one. Just a very quick word, just because it was quite an interesting story. We'll just finish with Udinese. You've mentioned in passing Udinese there, of course, as well. They held on with 10 men and did very, very well at the weekend as well.
Yes. Udinese, as I said, last season they had a terrible season. I mean, Udinese is a club that develops unexperienced, unknown players into potentially very good players and sells them at the beginning of their career. Okay, so last season Udinese, they were struggling big time. I mean, they were only playing draws. They changed a few months. The season before they did very well with Sottil, and then they changed. They kept Sottil on, but sold a couple of important players, and then they were struggling. Then Sottil went away, and then the new manager, now I'm missing the name of the manager, but
Runjaic.
Yeah, this one. This is from this season. Still talking about last season. I will come on the name of the manager. I mean, he was playing draws and like parking the bus, as we say, in front of the goal so that no one can score. But I mean, it was a disaster to see Udinese playing like that. And in the end, with Cannavaro, who overtook for the last 6-7 games, they managed to avoid relegation, but still it was a bit unpleasant to see Udinese like that. And now they've got a manager who seems to know what he's doing, because I've seen the team playing as a team, playing compact football. They don't shine in terms of quality. Okay, so they don't have extremely gifted players, I would say. But up front, they've got Toven, they've got Brenner, they've got a couple of players who can do well. They've lost and sold Samardzic to Atalanta, who's a fantastic player, who's gonna, in my opinion, flourish at Bergamo this season. But what I've seen is a compact team, okay, a united team, and that's the main characteristic, so to say, in football, that you play as a unity, independently of your quality. Then if you got massive quality, then you play for Champions League. If you don't have massive quality, but you still play good football, you can reach your goals, even though it's not going to be winning the title. No. But fair enough.
And you mentioned that squad, there is good players in there. Jürgen Kellenkamp, I'm a big fan of the central midfielder there. Pajero, Tovan, Hallström. That is a good squad. That's a really good squad.
I don't dislike Brenner, Brazilian striker they have. Yeah. If you do fantasy football, I got it in my fantasy football team the other day.
Oh, Brenner.
Yeah, so I hope he's going to score a few. Yeah.
So look at that, not just the expertise of Daniele on the actual football, but you get a bit of a fantasy way in on this as well. Don't
choose any player based on my notes. Honestly, or on my
Daniele, we have got to go. But what I will say is, I'm the world's worst fantasy player, right? Because I pick a team that works in real life. So I'll have a goalkeeper, I'll have my wing backs, I'll have two centre backs, I'll have a holding midfielder who's not going to get you any points and he's just going to pick up bookings. Like I'm garbage at fantasy. I'm the worst fantasy player in the world, man. So bad. Anyway, thank you so much as always, Daniele, a man who came back from the beach again today. This is the absolute life O'Reilly for this guy over in Italy.
Yes, but this is the last time, man. This is absolutely the last time. I still have a few days off, so to say. Next week, I'm fully back to work. I'm going to have a nice bike ride in the next days, so please don't call me, okay?
I won't, I promise you. And don't you message
Lovely.
me either. We'll talk next time. Daniele, thank you very much, pal. We'll speak to you next time.
Bye-bye.
And finally, on to the Bundesliga. 30 goals in the opening match day of the German action this week. It was a really fascinating week. Joining me now is Rob Daly, of course, football commentator, a man who spent plenty of time in and around German football in his career so far. Rob, we'll start at the very beginning, I suppose, with that Bayer Leverkusen game. They were the surprise winners of the league last season. We were hearing from Taufik last week about how they could be the value to go again. They got it done, but only just.
Yeah, they left it late again. They were outstanding first half at Borussia Park, and not an easy game to begin their first ever title defence, away at a local rival. It's not the rivalry in that region. That would be Gladbach against Cologne, but it's still a big derby. And great first half. They got themselves into a commanding position with the 2-0 lead. But then it fell apart in the second half, and Gladbach got themselves level. But I think this is a crucial thing to bear in mind with Bayer Leverkusen throughout the course of the season. And it's no secret that they're a team that can produce incredible things late in games. Now, admittedly, it was a VAR review penalty for Florian Wirtz. He even missed it. He had it saved by Omlin before he tucked in the rebound. But I think going deep into games, this Bayer Leverkusen team can always do something. And as Granit Xhaka was talking about after the game, he said it's now in our DNA that we can do things late all the time. So I think that kind of mentality, and even this opening game, the manner in which they won it, is a good indicator that they're going again for the league title.
And I think it's entirely possible they do it. This is a fairly chaotic-looking Bundesliga this season. Bayern, we'll talk about very shortly, aren't guaranteed to win the league as they have done in perhaps previous years. And I think the big thing for Bayer Leverkusen was keeping hold of not just Xabi Alonso, but the core and the big names in that side. They only really lost, Klošek in the summer, and that was no real stress, was it?
Yeah, he wouldn't necessarily be a starter, of course, for Bayer Leverkusen. And, there was a lot of talk about Frimpong, especially. He's been a player who's been massively in the headlines. But if you look at the team that started the other day at Borussia Park, it was all the same players. It was the same kind of 11 guys. Admittedly, there was rotation, and we saw the way Xabi Alonso managed to navigate not only a title challenge and a DFB Pokal challenge, but also make a run all the way to the Europa League final by making these kind of gentle rotations in competitions. They're still well equipped to go again, and it looks like they've made some additional great signings. And I think keeping Florian Wirtz, I wonder if this could be his last season as a Bayer Leverkusen player, whether the step up has to happen soon. But nonetheless, they're going to not only cause teams problems in the Bundesliga, but in the Champions League as well. They're going to be great fun to watch.
It's really nice to see another side suddenly look very, very dangerous in Germany after a long period of these two main sides going at each other, and now both of those two main sides are perhaps looking a little bit weaker. Quick word on Gladbach as well. One of my favourite sides in Germany because they are literally impossible to call at any point. Their home form tends to be very solid. Their away form tends to be a little bit weaker, but they're a bonkers side, and that opening game played into that as well.
It certainly did, and it looked like they had effectively got themselves a late equaliser. It was 5 minutes from time when Tim Kleindienst kind of managed to scramble in a snapshot past the goalkeeper. There's still big figureheads of that club, players like Nico Elvedi, who it feels like he's been there forever. But they are a club that has to churn through players. They sign players, sell them on for bigger money. So I'm going to hold any kind of judgment on Borussia Mönchengladbach. I feel like some seasons you go into it and go, they could be top 4, and suddenly they're 12th. So let's wait and see.
I think that's what I like the most about them, though, that they're just insane from the outside. You just have no idea what's going on. I absolutely love that with Mönchengladbach. I really do. I spoke about this last week with Taufik. They're my favourite German side for reasons I can't quite pin down, but then that makes me like them even more. It's great. Lever 1.8, they take on Leipzig this weekend to a 4.1. Leipzig obviously beat Bochum by a 1-0 at the weekend. That wasn't an easy win for them, though.
No, I mean Bochum have a brand new coach, and they were nearly relegated last season, just avoided it via the relegation playoffs. They beat Fortuna Düsseldorf in a penalty shootout. So you think, nice easy opening game for Leipzig. Admittedly, they've lost Dani Olmo, who scored on Tuesday night on his Barcelona debut. So I think we're all well aware of how big a loss that is. But they managed to get Xavi Simons back. And I must admit, I was surprised. I didn't know if he would sort of enter the Paris Saint-Germain fold or whether there would be, off the back of a European Championships appearance where he did well as well, get a big move away. So you're sort of looking at a squad and still going, that is still incredibly strong. And it's part of the culture of Leipzig, again, that they find the best young players and they have to sell them for big money. This is no secret. But they really were quite stodgy looking in that first half, especially. Now, I give a lot of the credit to Bochum for the way they contained Leipzig. There was a goal in the first half that was ruled out for offside. But it was the introduction of one of these new players. And he's not an unknown. Antonio Nusa has been linked with the Premier League for a long time. He was reportedly very close to joining Brentford, especially, once upon a time. But he came on and scored after 4 minutes. He scored with his first shot on his debut in the Cup. He did the same in the Bundesliga. So, surely, even at the age of 19, he's around the first team. And, it was a rusty performance from Leipzig. Again, you kind of think, can they challenge? But they always come up short. They haven't really been in a title race properly for some time. But I think in terms of the head coach, I think it's important they have a spell of stability now with Marco Rose. So just try and just keep this going for a little bit and see what they can do with the manager.
We mentioned again. We mentioned last week Asen Ouedraogo as well, who's gone in from Schalke. He's meant to be a real wonder kid. We're going to see more from him over the last few months. But Nusa, brilliant debut coming on to score that important goal for Leipzig. I think Lever probably win that game. I don't really see a chance, or not even a chance for Leipzig, but I just think there's enough about Lever to get it done.
Yeah, and those patterns of play, those rhythms, everything's extremely familiar to those Bayer Leverkusen players. There's a bit more tweaking perhaps has gone on at RB Leipzig this season, along with the loss of Dani Olmo. Willi Orban, the captain and central defender, obviously got himself sent off for the weekend, so they're down a crucial player at the back. I don't know if you saw his reaction to the red card. It was one of the best reactions to a red card I've ever seen. He brought down a player through on goal. Referee came over and sent him off, and he just ran off like a robot because it was just the most clear-cut red card you've ever seen. So he just went bye and just bolted off. So a loss at the back for Leipzig, ahead of taking on probably Victor Boniface up front.
Like Peter Crouch from a different dimension. Instead of facing a goal, you robot off after a red card. It was like a bad animation from a computer game where the player doesn't protest and they just run off. You forget how many players in Germany were designed by Hanna-Barbera, don't you, when you think back? Right. Over to Dortmund, who got a very comfortable 2-0 victory over Eintracht Frankfurt in their first game. And this was a game that was really summed up by the performance of one player. Now, I'm not sure if it's Bruno Gittins or just Gittins. I'm not entirely sure what he wants to go by. Either way, he was absolutely sensational in this game.
Yeah, so he's Jamie Gittins now. We actually were told over the summer that he wanted to drop the Bino. They're both his father's names, but his dad is known as Gittins, so right. He's going with Gittins. His dad was like, just go with Gittins. Don't worry about the Bino bit, essentially. So he's Jamie Gittins now, and it was a vital sub for Nuri Sahin. Eintracht Frankfurt were pretty competitive with Dortmund, which is no surprise. But they did need to change things to make that breakthrough. And it was individual brilliance, actually, from Jamie Gittins that won the game. I mean, his goal was unbelievable. It came moments after Eintracht Frankfurt had missed an open goal. And then down at the other end, step over, cut into his right foot, thumped it past Kevin Trapp. And then the solo run to kind of kill the game, the confidence to actually take on that finish deep into added time was absolutely brilliant. So you wonder to what extent, Pete, this is going to be a breakout season for him. And there's opportunities in this squad, not only because there's a new man in the dugout, but because so much experience left in the summer. We're looking at a crucial group. A couple of loanees that started the Champions League final in Ian Martson now at Villa and Jadon Sancho, whose future remains in question at Manchester United. Mats Hummels started the final, of course, and has since gone. Marco Reus admittedly would not have been a starter, but has headed off to the States. And Nicholas Füllkrug, now a West Ham player. So a big regeneration for Dortmund, which would probably leave you sceptical, or leave one sceptical about the chances of them challenging Bayern and Leverkusen for the title this season, despite Gittins looking like a real talent.
It is a year, like you say. I mean, obviously Dortmund are renowned for bringing through players, for young players, and then selling them on. That's what most clubs have to do anyway, outside of maybe 3 in the whole of football. But like you say, big year for the likes of Adeyemi, of course, Moukoko as well, who at one point was kind of flying, and just things slowed down a little bit for him. He's still incredibly young. That squad is so young. Obviously, Nuri Sahin now in charge, as Rob said. They take on Werder. Now, Werder, again, are a very odd side in Germany at times, capable of some incredible things. But we were speaking with Taufik last week. He was talking about Werder having a chance to surprise a few. They were okay in their opening game of the season.
Yeah, but I think Dortmund will have too much for them. And Nuri Sahin, a player who knows Werder, having played there as well. It'll be interesting to see if Gittins comes into that game as well and starts for Borussia Dortmund. I think there might be a couple of changes there. And look, I think it's a big job for Nuri Sahin. I mean, him and Vincent Kompany are not in too dissimilar places, really young coaches taking on big clubs. Pascal Gross, it's worth noting as well for people, started the weekend, made his debut. Valdemar Anton started, he actually scored in the Cup the other week as well. And Sekou Guirassy is not even back from his injury yet. He was up in the stands, the new striker, brilliant at Stuttgart last season, watching on. So this is all the quality that Werder Bremen are probably going to have to worry about in the coming days.
Yeah, they started with a 2-2 draw away at Augsburg in their opener. Right, let's get on to the meat of the discussion about the game at Wolfsburg, because it was an absolute stormer. We started with a stormer. We obviously finished with this Bayern stormer as well. 3-2 winners, a bonkers game, a big day for Thomas Müller, of course, as well, in terms of reaching records. Bayern are tough at short prices this season. I think they're very, very hard to predict week in, week out.
I've seen Bayern a couple of times in pre-season. They beat Wolfsburg 3-2, of course, in a rather dramatic game. I was actually impressed by them in pre-season, and there's a lot of pressure on Vincent Kompany, rightly so, because he has kind of skipped a level to go from Burnley having just been relegated to...
Just one level?
Yeah, maybe a couple of levels. But Harry Kane was talking about him at the weekend and says he's been very impressed. He's got the right aura, he's got the right ideas, and he's played recently, so a lot of his ideas are transferable. And there's a wholesale change to that squad. I actually thought there was going to be more change, Pete, to be honest, at Bayern, because there was talk of all these guys in the final year of their contracts. Does Joshua Kimmich stay? Does Alphonso Davies stay? Do you try and get cash for these guys now? Even the likes of Thomas Müller, Manuel Neuer, they're in the final years of their contracts. Leroy Sané too. So it's a massive sum. It's clear Leon Goretzka's not part of the plans. They've basically all but said it. He barely played in pre-season. This midfield pairing was Pavlovic and Kimmich, as it was at the weekend, instead of Chalpalini, who they've just brought in from Fulham. And everything looked pretty comfortable. That they took their lead through Jamal Musiala in the first half, but then were suddenly 2-1 down in the second half. Wolfsburg came out looking much sharper. Vincent Kompany talked about the game being more chaotic. But actually the introduction of Thomas Müller was key, and he helped force the error for the own goal. He was involved in the build-up with Harry Kane to set up Serge Gnabry, who was flying in pre-season. I mean, looking really good down the right to set up Gnabry for that winner. So that Thomas Müller still has a role to play. It's always been a diplomatic issue that if you put Thomas Müller on the bench, you're going to have the media breathing down your neck. You're going to have the fans breathing down your neck. You're going to have Thomas Müller, maybe having a word in the ear of other players, given his stature at the club. But if Vincent Kompany can sort of navigate the Müller issue as well, I'm sure Bayern will be contesting for the title this season.
Is that as pertinent now with Müller getting to the fact? I mean, it's much easier to explain now why you don't start Müller, surely. I mean, 34,
exactly.
It's much like, I can understand maybe 4 or 5 years ago you benched Thomas Müller, you're taking a risk. But I suppose that now at 34, it's almost a protection issue, isn't it?
and you have Musiala. But I think still sometimes with these veteran players, and Ronaldo's been the quintessential example of it. It's where, it was actually relatively well navigated at Real Madrid at the back end of his time there, that you can't play every single minute, you can't play all the time. And ultimately, Musiala's better than Müller now. Yeah. So, but Muller's versatility as well. I mean, I was at the Spurs-Bayern game in pre-season in North London, and Muller started as the centre forward. So I think this is the thing for Vincent Kompany. He's got options there. Muller can play any of the three attacking positions off the striker, or he can play the striker if you wanted to, give Kane a break for 30 seconds. So I still think there was lots to like. Some flashes of good play from Michael Elise on his Bundesliga debut as well. But, Pete, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the remaining days of the window at Bayern, because the squad is huge. They still have Goretzka at the club. Talk even of Kingsley Coman leaving as well, perhaps before the end of the window. So it's hard to really get a gauge of what Bayern are right now, given that there's still, you imagine, business to be done.
Do you think they win the league?
No. I think it will be Bayer Leverkusen's title again, especially given the fact that they've managed to keep that talent, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think it's going to have to kind of be a transitional season for Bayern, in part because of these players I was talking about coming into the end of their deals. Some of those guys will, you imagine, leave. I mean, Alphonso Davies is widely tipped to leave, most likely, for Real Madrid. So, but when you're the Bayern manager, you don't get transitional seasons.
No.
Especially since Pep. Pep kind of changed the idea of Bayern. I mean, it's always been the most demanding club in Germany, one of the most demanding clubs in the world, but the idea of not winning the league is unthinkable.
Yeah.
So will they give Kompany the grace of an iffy first season with some new players and some new ideas? They do look more intense. They're more pressing more aggressively. They're more physical. This is a big thing for me with Bayern, is that Vincent Kompany wants his players to be thumping into opposition defenders and stuff like that. So, but will he get that? Does he get that leeway? A bad 3 months and you're gone in that job. Yeah. But I still think Bayer Leverkusen are the team to beat.
It doesn't help him, does it, either, that it's not necessarily calm and settled behind the scenes at Bayern as well. That's the other issue. If everyone was happy with their roles behind the scenes at Bayern, you could kind of go, well, we're all calm, let's just take a breath. Whereas you've got about 30 people at Bayern all wrestling for control in a way.
Yeah, and it's not an unusual situation in a way that in recent years it's felt for some time that there's always something happening. Think of Hasan Salihamidzic losing his job on the pitch, that as they've just won the league against Cologne, a couple of years ago, Oliver Kahn finding out he'd lost his job sort of in those moments after winning the league title. I mean, it has been a chaotic situation.
The way the whole finish was a mess.
The whole Nagelsmann situation. So look, I think they need just a spell of stability. Does Vincent Kompany in the dugout provide that? I don't know. I think that was a really bold appointment, Pete, from Bayern. I get it. You've got this kind of Pep disciple. There are parallels between the way he wants to play and the way that Bayern want to play their football in that kind of Pep model. But you have to deliver. You have to do something. You have to be challenging. I mean, Thomas Tuchel, I think we can both agree, is a brilliant manager. Yeah. But they were off the pace in the Bundesliga, and he lost his job last season, despite the fact he's probably one of the best equipped to actually do that job.
Strange club, but it's going to be a very interesting season in the Bundesliga. 1.53, by the way, to win the league. Bayer Leverkusen 3.1. I mean, as Rob says,
I like it, Pete. I like it.
Of those two, mate. I mean, of those two prices, if we're talking, I know you're more of a football man than a betting man in that way, but 3.1 against 1.53 at the moment. There isn't a question for me in the bet.
They went unbeaten, and they're the same team. They're the same team, probably better.
The Europa League final, that's how long it took for Bayer to quote-unquote slip up, which is absolute madness. Bayern taken Freiburg at the weekend, 1.22. That's probably slightly more of an attractive price than the 1.53 on Bayern to win the league. Rob, thank you so much for joining us. Your expertise, absolutely, as always, magnificent. And folks, if you are just joining us for the first time, Rob also has the world's best dog. So, it's a pretty good situation he's got going over there. We will speak to you again very soon, Rob. Thank you very much, mate.
Me and Rex say goodbye.
Good. And I'm more bothered about the dog. Bye.
Bye.